At some point, we'll see. I'm gonna just start asking people, like, you want a sponsor?
No, that's what I did with my NILs.
Really?
Yeah, I just like DM'd a bunch of like sponsors or places that I knew were getting sponsors. So like Cheez-Its, Ritz crackers, like Liquid IV was the first one that I got. Yeah, just like a bunch of things that I was already eating, drinking. And then like a lot of times they'd be like, hey, like we're not looking for, women's soccer sponsorships right now, but like, if you want to hit us up again in maybe a year or two, maybe we'll be open to that idea.
But do they have to do paperwork like when you do anything, or is it still kind of in that gray area?
Well, so when I started doing it, it was like NIL had first come out.
Yeah.
So Liquid IV, I had started, and that's when everyone was hopping on that bandwagon. And I was supposed to do it through like an open doors contract.
Yeah.
And they were just like, nah, just like select your flavors and we'll ship it out to you. And I was like, oh, bet. But I guess when you do it through the open doors, you also get paid. So they were kind of like shortchanging me with not paying me, but I was like, free Liquid IV, everyone. With that. I mean,
you'll take it at the beginning, right? Yeah. You just gotta learn the process.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, folks, welcome to the Coaching Rebellion podcast. Very excited today to have a really good friend of mine, former Arroyo Don, known Miss Vanessa Jones here for quite some time, and wanted to reach out and really just, again, talk to former players that I've had interactions with. When I messaged Vanessa, it was a quick, same like all the other responses. Let's go, let's jump in. So Vanessa, thank you for jumping on and agreeing to meet with me and chat for a little bit. Very excited to have you here, and more than anything else, just want to kind of retrace your career. It's been really fun kind of watching you from afar, not only you but your sister as well, and then we can kind of talk about your experience. Shout out to the Jones family. You guys have also been amazing, so extremely supportive over the years, and it's just been really fun to watch your guys' family, if I'm being honest with you. Yeah. Like, you guys are on social media, you guys are funny, you're goofy, there's always just good times, and I know that social media only paints a small picture of it, but you guys are awesome, man, so hats off to you guys. You guys are amazing.
Never a dull moment.
Never a dull moment. Every time I'm scrolling, I'm like, I gotta watch this, because what do they got going on? There's always some kind of dancing, joking. The prank you guys played on your dad with that, I was like, how did that still work?
I know, and I'm like, I gotta understand he's never gonna do a TikTok with me again. He can never trust me, and I understand it, but how to trick him just that once.
You burnt the bridge, huh?
I had to, yeah.
But you burnt it well.
I did, yeah. No, but thank you for having me. And my family, they're just the best supporters. I mean, I seriously could not thank them enough. Yeah. And I think after I've gotten a little bit older, having those conversations with my mom especially, understanding those sacrifices that she made for me and my sister, not only for her time but money, the finances, all of that went into it. And I was just playing, I'm playing club soccer, and I had these goals, and I didn't see really the behind the scenes and what she sacrificed, what my dad sacrificed, just so I could get to the platform that I did. So thank you, Mom. Thank you, Dad. You guys are rock stars. And then, my sister as well. We're best friends now, You would have asked me 15 years ago, right? We're still, giving each other, the little knucklehead, a little choke out here and there. But no, seriously, she's been my rock as well. But I mean, man, 20 years I've been playing now, and being 24, it's that's all I've really ever known. Mm-hmm. So after graduating from Toledo in when was that? 2023. My season ended that fall of 2022. It was all right, so who's Vanessa? Gotta rebuild that sense of identity. But just to kind of retrace, kind of just start at that beginning. I grew up in San Lorenzo, right? I did that pee-wee, right? Non-competitive stuff, and I was like, I don't want to get a competitive edge in there. But, I was just that all-around athlete, swimming, soccer, softball. I didn't like it too much, but, I tried it out, basketball, track and field. But soccer was always that like team component. I loved winning as a team. I loved succeeding and celebrating as a team, and just having like those girls to support and rely on. So I knew that when I was little. So once I started getting into that competitive aspect of playing for Saxel, California North Stars, right? We are so loyal. It kind of hurt me in that process of development in kind of that long run. So I had stayed with Saxel for, when was that? Up until 2013. And my 8th grade year, I was like, Mom, like I have these goals for myself. You know, I want to, at the time it was, I want to walk through those Surf Cup gates. I want to know what they're talking about. I want to know, like, what are these fields looking like? Like, that was my goal. And, you know, as far as North Stars had brought me, right, I just needed that extra push. So I ended up going over to California Magic, and I was a part of that very first team. You know, we always talk about the 99s. That's like the staple name around there. And I was just so fortunate and blessed, like, again, those sacrifices that my mom made to get me out to practices, right? We were sitting in traffic for a long time just to get to practices.
Yeah, because that wasn't right around the corner anymore.
No, yeah, it was a hop, skip, and a jump now, right? And then I'll move on to my sister. She was out in Santa Rosa, so... but understanding, right, like that first year, that was probably one of the hardest years that I really had to put my head down and work, because before it was a little bit natural just being a physical player. Now it was about, okay, can you also be a technical player as well? Can you understand and read the game? Can you be a playmaker, right? And so now, like, looking back on it, I was like, man, I was so driven because I had this goal of Surf Cup. Like, I was willing to do everything. I put in extra hours, all of that time, like, spent into soccer. So then those final, like, 3 years of high school, like, I could really see it play out. This is also when, like, the college recruiting was still very, very young. So at that point, I had a lot of teammates already getting offers and talked to, and I was kind of feeling behind a little bit, but again, right, like, my team had so many valuable players that we were just kind of all eyes on us. I knew, like, eventually I was going to get there, but again, my mind wasn't really on college just yet. You know, I think with our environment as well, I think it's panned out to be a bit larger, but for the most part, it's just about graduating high school, right? And then after that, it's like, okay, you got to get a job. You know, it's these next steps of, okay, buy a house, start a family. It's very generational. Whereas now I've seen a lot of people go to college, right? And now it's kind of, okay, you graduate high school. Now it's about maybe junior college. Now maybe a 4-year. Which is really, really great for the community. But, you know, at that point, I still wasn't really thinking about college. And finally walked through those Surf Cup gates. And from then, like, that one tournament, I just remember Surf Cup, you know, and I walk through and I see all these teams and all these colleges. And I was like, I want to do this.
So for those that don't know what Surf Cup is, walk me through what that means, what the significance of Surf Cup is, because there's a lot of tournaments out there. Right? And a lot of people that either don't know the system or haven't gone through those levels that you've discussed may not have a clue what that is, you know? And, I mean, there's so many things out there, but there's something about that tournament. Why was that a specific goal, and what was that like for you?
Yeah, well, you know, again, going back to Saxel, right, we didn't have that visibility to be able to understand what kind of tournaments are out there for us, you know? So Surf Cup is just a really big platform for colleges, really exceptional teams to come and compete. And the big one is Summer Surf Cup, you know? So it's held down in San Diego, and we always just talk about the fields. I mean, it's like playing on carpet, you know? It's pristine. You know,
it's
it's
the best feeling.
I will say though, they built it on like garbage, so it kind of has a smell to it. But the grass is pristine. I mean, and my thing is like slide tackling, so I was just slide tackling everywhere. But when you walk in, it says that Surf Cup, you know, gate, and then it says through these gates walk the best of the best, and that right there, that saying was
Yeah.
stuck in my mind, right? Like, I am now one of the best of the best.
Love that.
And when you walk through, it's like, you know, music's playing, you know, vendors are all out, but they have a Surf Cup poster wall, and it has every single player's name on it.
Wow.
From every single team that's there. So, you know, girls and guys are like looking all along the poster board, right? Like, I think every single year I've posted next to my name. Me and Vicky had one year where we were both next to each other. That was awesome. But again, like, just that excitement, like, I knew, okay, this is something that I really am passionate about, and it's not, yes, it's a hobby, but like, I want to make it more. So I had expressed that to my coach, and I said, I really want to play college. And he, you know, at the time was like, hey, you know, I'm just gonna lay it out flat for you, right? You've got a lot of work if you want to go and play Division I. I was like, I want to do it, right? So the great thing is women's sports, you know, because of Title IX as well, where in college, you know, colleges need to have the same amount of female as male athletes. Since a lot of schools carry a large football roster, typically there's more female sports. So we just have that opportunity to have the luxury of kind of picking and choosing where we want to go, whereas like the men's side, it's a bit stricter and firmer guidelines. But you know, at that time I was like, man, you know, I want to go outside of California. I really want to, you know, explore, spread my wings, but I don't want to be too far from my family. You know, again, like we've already discussed, right? Like, I have those family ties. And so I was like, let me just look at the West Coast. And when I had expressed it to my coach, again, he's fairly new in the recruiting process as well. And I think that was one of the things that hurt me the most, was limiting myself only to one area. And I know a lot of us from, you know, the Bay Area as well, this is all we know. And we like to stay in our comfort zone. And, you know, I was playing into that comfort zone. Oh, you know, it's just, you know, it's a 14-hour drive, but it's, you know, 3-hour plane ride. You know, we're all good. If I need something, an emergency, you know, we can get there. And again, that's just me playing into my comforts. And so at that time, you know, we had a couple of interests from, again, these like crazy schools. I know the biggest one was like Campbell in North Carolina. I was like, North Carolina? Oh, no. That's way too far. What's in North Carolina? You know, so the biggest thing that I like to tell players now is don't restrict yourself, because you never know what's gonna pop up. And honestly, leaving home was the best thing for myself, just so I can grow as Vanessa instead of, you know, with my Jones family. I know that they would come out anywhere for me, which I, again, have that luxury. But, you know, it's like, okay, like, you gotta push yourself, go somewhere where no one knows you, right? So that first place that I had kind of really talked to was Eastern Washington. But again, I was 16 and I had just started getting into like, hey, Vanessa, you're pretty good, right? Like, you're actually a solid player.
And she's not just blowing smoke, folks. I got to witness this firsthand, all right?
I can bring some accolades
straight baller,
into
all
it.
right? Deal with a baller out here.
I mean, 4-time Arroyo varsity player, right? 2-year captain.
We got to saw. I mean, you mentioned earlier that you were playing with some really great talent, and you guys had this run when I was over there. Watching you guys play, it was just like, man, there's some really fun soccer happening right now. There's some great talent. So you're 100% dead on. You know.
And you know what? I got to give my props off to Warnoff, Andrew Warnoff, because he brought some players in who didn't really have that technical foundation or drive, and because, you know, the rest of us had that support and motivation of, hey, we want to go from the D2 conference into D1. And everyone just got on that boat. I mean, that was like hands down one of the best parts of playing high school soccer
Yeah.
was like everyone was just connecting and bonding and saying like, we have this goal, let's go and grab it, right?
Yeah.
So
Shout out Warnoff, man.
shout out Warnoff, man. I love that man.
Yeah, it was a good time with him,
Yeah.
We were there, I came in right around the same time, and, we started building this culture between both, men's and women's programs, and we were kind of on the same page of like trying to just create this culture, and you guys were just amazing. When we brought the collective together and the sharing of ideas, and everybody was kind of on the same page of like, let's raise the bar a little bit, and everybody was up to that challenge. So yeah.
And when we start going into more like the coaching, like I want to bring it back to him because he's the one who inspired me to like understand that coaches are meant to build lifelong relationships with these young women, right? And we'll talk about my college experiences, but how easily that can be abused, and just unfortunate to not be able to grow those relationships. But I mean, he's still in my life till this day. He came out to one of my Oakland Soccer Club games this last summer. Like he's a rock, and I know that if I ever need anything, like I can always depend on him. So literally shout out Warnoff. He is awesome. But backtracking, so 16, right? Again, I'm thinking, all right, Vanessa, you're a baller, right? And this school was Division I, Eastern Washington University, and I was like, I'm talking to this coach, this assistant coach. He really likes my game. I've done my research. It was more of a rural area, and I was like, I think I can really jive with that. And so I was like, what? Let me just look more into it. And at the time, the assistant coach, he was like, Vanessa, you're my number one. I'm just, being straight up with you. You're my number one. Once you get here, I'm planning on playing you. So you need to stay in shape, top tier, game ready, And so me thinking, Vanessa, again, you're the baller, right? You're going to come into this Division I program. You're going to make it your own.
Yeah.
You're going to be that star player. Posters are going to be everywhere of you. So now I'm getting right over my head. And finishing out high school, again, right, with my signing and everything, I had committed to Eastern Washington. Everyone was like, oh, Vanessa, you're awesome. And I just really let that get to my head. So even though I was putting in a lot of work, a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of efforts into becoming this great player so then I can go into college and be ready, right, I didn't really do all of my homework, all of my research. And, when I got there, I had that dorm experience, which was great. The sickness was not great, right? Dorm sickness is not fun. But freshman year kind of panned out how every freshman year kind of goes. The weird thing though was as soon as I was coming in, that assistant coach left.
Oh.
So now going from, you're number one, you're going to come and you're going to play. Now it's about, okay, I got to fight for my spot. And, a typical recruiting class is about 5 to 9 girls. I was one of 16, which is a crazy number. Every time I tell that to people, they're like, what? So again, right, you're not only fighting for a spot with the one of 16 freshman group, but you're also, with those returning players. You're a freshman. You gotta earn your spot. So, I kind of came in that freshman year. I got a little less than 50 minutes, but I was traveling. Right, I was getting involved. The head coach at the time, he was going through his own personal life stuff. It wasn't really translating onto the field, and that's where I started to understand like this is not for the faint of heart. So this is where I started to get into a bit more of my challenges and my hardships. But basically he just kind of abused his power a bit and played some psychological, emotional games with everyone. I think after my freshman year, six girls in total had either quit or transferred. And again, that's after 1 year.
Yeah.
Typically we'll see two,
three
maybe, outside of graduates, right, just transfers. So, that number was like, oof,
Yeah,
okay.
that's an alarm.
Now I was telling myself, okay, you got to be mentally strong, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's just trying to break you. And growing up here, right, I've been used to those mental challenges that you got to just push through. And that sophomore year is really where I kind of hit that wall, and I talked to people about it, but I've experienced depression with it, and again, he started to play psychological games with me. One of our teams in our conference is Sac State, right up the road.
Mm-hmm.
So when we were traveling, we were supposed to be traveling out here to Sac State, and he had turned it into a whole trip. I think it was like a week-long trip or something like that. And I was the only person to not travel, the only one on the team. So,
there's no way he didn't know that was going to be a big deal for him.
So, I think after that, I was like kind of starting to lose faith in myself and say like, hey, Vanessa, maybe soccer wasn't really for you.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe, you were destined to do swimming, or, I don't know.
Yeah.
And so I was talking a lot to my mom, I was talking a lot to my dad, to my sister, and, we had come to the point where we were like, you know what, let's just try the transfer portal. Let's just try it. And at that time, right, like it was also still not like a super big thing.
Mm-hmm.
So when you went into the transfer portal, it was because you either did not enjoy your academics at your school or the coaching. It wasn't like, oh, I have a year eligibility left and I just want to go for my graduate program. It was one of the two. So I had gone in there, and I was like, again, that comfort started to kick in of maybe I should just go to Davis.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I should go somewhere close to home, just in case this happens again, and I have my family to rely on.
Yeah.
And my mom is, she was always like, whatever you want to do, like, I'm here for you, And then here comes Toledo, Ohio. They reached into my email, and I was like, Toledo, Ohio. I don't know, I guess I'll check them out, right? It's another Division I. I'll check them out. And when I had gone out there, I mean, the facilities were fantastic. The academics were 10 times better, so I was like, at least I know my academics, because I wanted to pursue medicine, right? So I was like, they have their own medical school, it's bada bing, bada bang, bada boom, everything's just lining up. And I was like, all right, this is what, my plan is. This is where, life was meant to put me. And I had transferred there January of 2020. Right, so we transfer into the dorms. Okay, I'm meeting all these new friends. Spring break hits. Boom, pandemic. All right. So now we got to pack everything up from Toledo, bring it all back home. And I'm like, man, all right, I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So my coach had reached out, hey, ladies, we're not going to have our season in the fall, but I want everyone to come back so we can train. I was like, all right, you know what? It's going to get me out of the house. I'll be able to hang out with my friends. It sucked a lot, right, not having that reward of playing, but at least I'm getting out and I'm moving. So that whole fall semester was kind of like a fever dream of just practice, go home, sleep, no classes, practice. And winter break rolls around, and my mom is just, asking again, like, how you doing? Oh, I'm good. I'm feeling really excited for this, season. We had pushed our season from the fall into the spring. I'm feeling really excited. All right, do you like school? Yeah, I love school. All right, are you making friends? Yeah, I love my friends. All right, so we're just gonna keep it rolling. So we go into spring, and I was starting, I was playing. I was like, man, this is finally it, right? And then my grandma had passed away, and I was like, man, oh man, like, this amazing woman was such a foundation in my life. Now it's like, okay. And again, right, those like pressures of you're starting, you're playing, right? Don't let that go to waste.
Yeah.
So I had spent only one day grieving about that.
Yeah.
The next day, right, I was already back at practice. And again, right, I think that just kind of goes into the coaching personal effects as well. Like, I know my player is struggling, right? but I also need to give her that grace of knowing that, yes, even though we're in a competitive environment, like I got her back.
Yeah.
So we had gone into a rivalry game that following Sunday after her passing, and I mean, center back, I played it back to my goalkeeper, forward intercepted it and scored. Right, as soon as that happened, I got pulled off, and I was like, man, well, there goes that shot. And
yeah.
The whole rest of the season, I didn't really play as much. So again, I'm just thinking, like, what's my purpose?
Mm-hmm.
Like, really, what is my purpose? I finished off college, those final 2 seasons, and I was captain. Right, like I really brought that leadership to my team. I mean, if you go back and listen to any one of my old games, like you will hear me on the bench like TOL, and the crowd goes EDO. Like it was just, I loved being a part of that like culture to where everyone loved being a Rocket, which was great. But again, it's like, man, I just want to play.
Yeah.
And then those psychological aspects in my senior year, we had played Michigan and Vicky was a freshman, so we had that duel, and we didn't really get to play against each other, but the rivalry was still there.
Yeah.
I was bugging my mom and dad. I was like, where are you guys gonna sit? What t-shirts are you wearing? Who are you gonna be rooting for?
Jersey.
No, so they made like the custom Toledo Michigan shirts. That was awesome.
That's the move right there.
That was awesome. But again, like I just like look back and I'm like, again, he could have built these relationships with all these amazing young women, and instead like decided to just use his power for the one game ahead, for the season ahead. And he burned so many bridges in the process. So my senior game, he had started all of our seniors, which was great, because at first he wasn't going to start all of us, and I had to step in and say, hey, that's not right. So we all stepped onto the pitch, whistle blows, and all I hear is 1 minute later, kick the ball out, and I was the only person to come off. And that just like, not only is that affecting me as a player, but as a person too. You don't trust me enough to like hold it down for 15 minutes. My whole family flew out, to support me, and then as I come off, he's just sitting there, legs crossed, doesn't stand up, give me a hug, nothing. Only my defender coach does that. She's awesome. But, it's like, man, you really could have had this amazing young woman, right? And I could have depended on you, to be that amazing male figure in my life, right? To lean on, to be a role model for, and burn that bridge, right?
I mean, it's such a critical phase during those college years, because you brought up
100%.
earlier, who is Vanessa, right? And the whole reason, we go to school, we go to college, and you go to learn about yourself.
Yes.
And, I had a similar situation where, my sophomore year, I'm playing junior college ball, and I wind up getting hurt, third or fourth game, I think it's like preseason. And I had the backing of, coaching. And I was going down this path of like, let me explore if I can do like a medical red shirt type thing. And there was no backing from the administration. There was this like 20% rule that if you had played 20% of games, et cetera, and it was so trivial. And just to hear that it just kind of got brushed under the carpet, like I came committed to playing, to trying to develop myself as an athlete and as a person, and that really just took the sails out of everything. You know what I mean? And so I lost that season. I missed the sophomore bowl, which is kind of the showcase for everybody to go play in front of coaches, and it was just that thing where I was just like, man. And I look back at that all the time, and I'm like, what a wasted moment, but it really did impact me. So I know exactly what that feeling is like, of like, this is that moment where you got to go to bat for the student athlete, because it's not just about the game, it's about the person, right? I mean, if I had a time machine to do it all over again, and you could predict what was going to happen, like, I don't want to get hurt and then lose my entire season, and then life just goes, all right, this is the path that you're on now. you know, I wanted to transfer and go, and you know, similar to you, like I started getting these like, you know, conversations around leaving California. We had schools that had come and they were like, you know, matter of fact, Iowa was one of those areas where they were like, oh, we offer a lot of money for California players.
Yeah. Yeah.
You go to Iowa as a California player and it's like, it's almost put on a platter for you.
That's honestly for a lot of schools, especially out in the Midwest. They truly love California players.
Yeah.
So that's why I like to tell, you know, young athletes as well, like, don't restrict yourself to just one area. Just look. There's no harm and foul in just looking instead of saying, right, Campbell, North Carolina. North Carolina, I want to cross that off my list, right? Like, really look into it. Because now, right, even when I was in the transfer portal, I was like, oh, Campbell's looking for a center back. Oh, let me look into it, right?
Yeah.
But, so now that's where I kind of use that, like, into my coaching of, you know, I believe that I was meant to have that harder, you know, very curvy, windy path.
Yeah.
So then I can help players not.
Well, don't jump the
have
gun.
that.
We're gonna get into
I
the
know.
coaching
I'm sorry.
stuff.
Yeah, I know.
All right?
I know. But no. I mean, just to finish off, right? But that last season, like I had really pushed my foot, especially for that senior game, and like you just said, right, it took all the wind out of my sails, right? So that was, I believe it was mid to late September we had that senior game. And I mean, I wasn't even walking on my foot. And I really was like holding on to that last thread for my senior game. Yeah. And as soon as that was done, I went up to my trainer. I was like, yeah, I can't walk. And she's like, why am I just now hearing about this? You know, so we had gotten it, you know,
Typical
looked at.
Athlete.
But we had gotten that looked at, and I had like 2 pre-fractures in my foot.
Oof.
I was in a boot for about 8 weeks. Like that's how I finished off my collegiate career. And I was like, man, I mean, what a way to end, you know, after all of this trials and tribulations and highs and lows, and I did summer with this boys team and I was killing it, to, you know, you're finishing out in a boot and you only played the first minute of your senior game. You know, I think also that social media aspect of seeing a lot of my other friends succeeding, and Vanessa's riding the bench, right? So it's like, it was almost embarrassing at times to talk about it. And again, like, you don't realize how much social media is a facade until you really start having those open conversations and understanding, like, those players that are succeeding, they're having their struggles of their own, right? It might not be the same as mine, but everyone's kind of working through something. But I like to tell, you know, especially like my sister right now, is how can I use a different perspective to change my outcome, right? Because a lot of the time, the first like 3 seasons of my collegiate career, it was very, what am I doing wrong? Why am I comparing myself to, you know, so-and-so and so-and-so, you know, like why are coaches not playing me? And instead, those last 2 seasons were, yes, those were probably my hardest 2 seasons. It was about, hey, right, like college is so short-lived. How can I make the most of it? If I'm not traveling, right, can I hang out with my friends, right? You know, just making those last final memories. And those last 2 seasons were my favorite because I was starting to understand who Vanessa was outside of soccer. And that made me even more passionate in soccer, because I wasn't just playing for myself, but I was playing for all those other girls, you know, who supported me. And I think that was just really telling, because, you know, there's always going to be a couple of girls who like to hate, right? A couple of guys who like to hate.
Everywhere you go in life.
Everywhere, right? But when you bring a positive, you know, aspect to it, right? Those people are going to just move out of your circle. Everyone else just comes in and fills your cup. And really, that's what made leadership easy and hard. So when I got voted into captainship, you know, everyone wrote down, we had 3 captains at the time, so we were voting for a 4th. I didn't vote for myself. I'm not, you know, not conceited like that. But we had 35 girls on the team, and my coach said 33 players voted for you.
Overwhelming majority.
You know, so that like spoke to me and said that all these girls trust me, not only in a leadership role, but on the field, right, as a person and as a friend. So, you know, a couple of those girls, right, I had to unfollow on social media, and, you know, we don't have that relationship anymore, which, you know, is unfortunate. But, you know, but those other girls, I really formed that bond, and again, you see that in our sport is lifelong connections, and, you know, that kind of, I don't want to call it like trauma bonding, but sometimes, right, that comes into it of like, you know, the running, the emotional, the physical stresses, like you bond over that. And
it takes somebody to really be in the fight with you to understand what you're going through. You know, I'll always hold in high regard all the people that I played with as well for that reason. Right? It's like I can talk to somebody about it, but unless you were there, it's just not the same. You know what I mean? So that's actually a great little term, trauma bonding.
I mean, when I like talk about like my running over at Eastern Washington, because we did some running over there, and I'm like, hey, you remember? Like we had to do those full field suicides. They're like, oh man, yeah, those were the worst. And I'm like, yeah, but now we can look back on it and laugh. You know, like it's just in the moment. I was like, man, like I can't get through this. And now we're just like sitting back laughing. We're like, you know, maybe it was a little excessive, you know, but you know,
in the moment you're just
we got through it.
I love that. You look back on some of the stuff that you've done over the years, and you're like,
wow, that's a little gray area. Most definitely gray area.
I think everybody that's played some sort of sport has experienced that. So that's awesome, man. Let me ask you this. You'd mentioned something earlier that really, you know, kind of caught my attention, and it was around the topic of, you know, when you're trying to find yourself, right? You go through these waves, and at some point, you know, there's that little light that switches on, right? Was there a moment where you were ready to just kind of pack it all in? And if so, like how close were you? Because, and really more so what I want to get out of this is, you know, a lot of times people, you know, encounter a difficult time and they don't know how to like push through that, right?
All right, so there's a lot of times. And I mean, the biggest one was that Sacramento trip. I was like, this is just, he's doing this for a reason.
So
he wants me to quit. I was in my apartment bed for 3 days.
Oh, wow.
And they were in Sacramento, you know, and again, social media. So I'm seeing everyone laughing, having a good time. And what had really hurt me at that time was like only 2 of my friends had reached out and asked me how I was doing. You know, so I'm thankful that I had other friends on different teams, you know, but you know, those 3 days, like I didn't really do anything. I was just in bed crying, and at that point I was like, I'm done. You know, I was supposed to be the star player, and I'm at home and everyone else is having a great time when I'm supposed to be having a great time. So I kind of turned it into like a, you know, why me situation. And that's when I was just like, I'm done. I don't have any more fight in me. You know, my freshman year was supposed to be my fighting season, and now it was supposed to be easier. And this sophomore season, I didn't travel at all, right? I didn't play at all. And it's like, why am I showing up to practice day in and day out, giving it my all for somebody who does not care about not only me as a player, but me as a person, right? And so that team was very successful that year. They had gone into, the conference was Big Sky Conference, and they were traveling. We had gone my freshman year as well, and it was awesome. Like the first night that every team gets there, we get all dressed up, we have this really nice dinner. It's a really like cool thing to see, you know, as a young person, as a young player. And so my sophomore year, we had made it into that tournament. But again, right, I didn't contribute to that success. And even though, right, we always say, even though you didn't step onto the pitch, right, everyone gets a ring. That was like our saying, is everyone gets a ring. So once I got out of that Sacramento funk, we had finished off the season. Okay, we're going into our Big Sky Conference. And again, right, the travel roster comes out. Everyone is traveling. I'm the only one, right? And this is the really messed up part, is since our since our field was grass, we had a guy, his name was Ferg, and he cut our grass. Like, he was our guy. He made our grass just fantastic.
Shout out groundskeepers.
Yeah, but they traveled him over me.
Wow.
And so that's where I was like, I'm done. I need to get out of here now, right? If I don't get out of here now, I will not put my cleats on ever again.
Yeah.
So I had called my coach, and my thing is when I get very passionate, I get very emotional. So I wrote everything down that I wanted to say, and I called him up, and everyone's loading onto the bus, and I was like, Coach, I just want to let you know I thank you for this opportunity. I don't think that this is going to work any further, and I'm going to enter the transfer portal. And it was just a very toxic relationship. He was yelling at me, screaming at me, saying, how could you do this? You're leaving your teammates behind. Very toxic relationship. And again, he was going through his own personal things, right? But don't take that out on me.
Yeah.
Right? I was 19 at the time. Okay, you're a grown man. And I was like, I'm going to collect my things. I'm going to be out of the locker room by the time that you guys are back. And I called my mom, and I just sobbing. I was like, this isn't meant for me.
Yeah.
I'm not strong enough. And she was like, you are. And you know what you're going to do? You're going to drive down to that bus, and you're going to say goodbye to everyone. All your teammates. You're going to say goodbye. And I was like, what a power play.
Yeah.
And so I drove down there, and I said, hey guys, just want to let you know, I'm going to clear out my locker room. I'm going to be transferring. I hope you guys do really successful at the tournament. I wish you nothing but the best. You guys have my number, reach out. So everyone's like, what? They're all coming out, giving me a hug. And at that point, right, like fire instantly just like reignited. And even though I didn't want it to be there, because I was like, I'm done, I was like, I'm not done. There's something. You
felt the team kind of collective, right?
Yeah, I mean that too. And I was just like, it was more of a, at the time it was more of a, I'm gonna show you what I can do to my coach, right? And when I look back on it, that's kind of the immature answer. I needed to do it for myself. But at that time that was all I could think about was, how can I prove you up? So I think my family, especially my dad, has always been the very like, you can push through it.
Yeah.
If you tell your mind, right, it will do it. Now you want to talk about the beep test? I don't know, because that one is the when my mind says I'm done, I'm done. Right, I can't push through that one. But
no shout out to the beep test.
No shout out to the beep test. Never. Yeah, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna transfer, and that's gonna be kind of my yes or no answer. Is if I get picked up, I'm gonna go 110%. If not, right, I did what I could, and it just wasn't meant for me. So once I did get picked up, and again, I got picked up by a school who, they didn't see any of my college clips, because I only had less than 50 minutes collectively over 2 seasons, right? So they picked me up on a high school tape that I had, or highlight tape that I had made, and they were like, we just need a strong, present center back. And I was like, I can do that. But again, right, with the whole playing, style, right, I didn't really fit into what they're looking for. They wanted somebody to just be physical and kick that ball up to their forwards, whereas I am a playmaker. I like to settle the ball. I like to just disorganize my defenders, right?
Yeah.
Like I want to get those opposite forwards moving. I want to get you tired by the 30th minute. So then guess what? If I want to dribble up, right, I have that energy to do so. So we just weren't really seeing eye to eye with playing style. And then again, right, he was kind of taking advantage of the personal relationships that he could have built. And again, right, I was going through that struggle of, okay, right, like you had your chance and then you lost it.
Yeah.
You made one mistake and you lost it. And I was blaming myself. And my best friend, who I met at Toledo, my 3 roommates, I got really, really lucky getting paired up with them in my dorm because they are my best friends.
That's like winning the lottery.
It really is. So
that doesn't happen.
It does not happen. And again, like, I just believe that it was all part of my plan. And I just didn't see the bigger picture yet. So so for the Toledo dorms, it's 2 rooms and 4 people occupying the space. And so the one girl that I had moved into her room, I heard that she was like, her name was Peyton. She was like super upset, crying to her mom. She was like, I thought I was gonna have a room to myself, and now this girl from California is coming in here. Californians are mean. And so that whole first semester, I was like, oh, this girl does not like me.
Wow.
But come to find out, right, we love each other. I'm gonna be her bachelorette in the fall. Yeah, we just.
You see what happens.
It all plays out. But I was really, really fortunate to find those 3 girls because they were like, Vanessa, you are so much more than just being a soccer player. Do you realize that? And I was like, I am. And so I finally kind of like took that. I don't want to say emotions because I still had my emotions into it, but I took it from 150 down to just 120, right? Just so I can be a little bit more level-headed and understand that I'm not going to completely change my style of play to fit him.
Yeah.
And I understand he's not going to play me for that reason. So we can both be stubborn and butt heads, but I'm not going to change. And that's where if players want to play, you have to become accustomed to your coach's style. Otherwise, they're not going to look at you, right? So I was just being stubborn, and I was like, I know my style is better than yours. I know it's going to win us games, but we're gonna butt heads, and that's fine, right? Now it's about, okay, right, how can I still be passionate but also take a step back and understand who Vanessa is? And that's where I really started just building friendships outside of soccer. And I was making those friendships with my fellow students in my classes. And I made a mentor with one of my professors. When I was in Italy, I was sending him pictures, and I was like, hey, Dr. M, look at what I'm doing. And he's like, yeah, that's awesome, and that wouldn't have happened if I was, so focused on something that wasn't really gonna happen for me just because I was being stubborn. And it just, I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna take it for what it is, and I'm gonna make the most out of the time that I have left, because when you go in as a freshman, you're like, oh, I have so much time ahead of me, and then sophomore year creeps up and you're like, I'm not a baby anymore, I'm not a freshman. And then junior year, and you're like, oh man, that kind of went by quick.
Finish line.
Senior year, all right. And senior year comes around and you're like, oh man, wow, that went by quick, So I got lucky with my sophomore year. Since I didn't play, I got that 5th year. And because of COVID, I technically have a 6th year that I could play, but I was like, I think that 5 years was enough for me. Yeah. And I was kind of nudging at my sister's coach at Michigan. I was like, the only place I would play is, at
Michigan. A super sub? Nah.
With Vicky. But that was just kind of like a
pipe dream type deal.
Yeah, but it's just more about like understanding the bigger picture. I think that's what kept me really motivated, and understanding that it's only gonna be a little portion of my life. Like there's this whole timeline, and collegiate soccer is taking up that much. So it's like, how can I make the most of it and understand that not all of my memories are just gonna be soccer memories. There's gonna be so much more involved in it, right? It was the bus rides. It was collecting the gear. It was, trying on new gear in the locker room, everyone being excited for summer Christmas, So I think just trying to understand, like, again, the perspective, what I've talked about, understanding, okay, right? Like, I'm going to make the most with what I have, and I'm just going to be a present person in this program. So that's why I was always the loudest one. Like, on the bench, I'm like banging on our glass door, you know, and when we played against Michigan, Vicky was like, do you know how annoying you are? I'm like, yeah, that's the whole point.
Yeah.
You know, I want to get in good, I want to get
in your head.
Yeah. So I'm like banging on the thing, and I'm telling my teammates, come on, bang, you know, and DOL. So it's again about like that perspective, being a present person and understanding that it's such a small portion in your life. Make the most of it. Have fun. Like, try new things. Meet new people. You know, that was like the best thing that I took away, especially talking to my 3 friends. Like, okay, you know what? I do only have a short amount of time left. I want to make the absolute most of it. Yeah.
That is the ultimate definition, I think, of what I've been trying to really relay out of this whole project. So before we started, you asked me why I started doing this. And, you know, the short answer was I still want to stay connected in a coaching role, even though I can't coach full time, right? And so how can we make an impact? How can we let people know maybe the information that hasn't gotten to them, right? And I've always emphasized the fact that it is just this little small blip of time.
So small.
Right? Life, again, will take you so many different paths, but you have that opportunity, and some people are shortchanged themselves. I've seen so many people that have phenomenal talent that either through pressure from home or pressure from friends, you know, that they just go, nah, you know what, I'm not going to do that, right? And I'm always the one that's going to go, you have to go do it. You have to go do it. You have to go experience it, because you will have that regret later. You know, I mean, I can look back and go, I should have pushed through my own wall and challenge and gone, you know what, you know, and take a little bit of Vanessa's approach of, you know what, I'm going to show this coach, like, or I'm going to show this school what I'm about, and, you know, really push through that whole, you know, scenario where I just like, forget it, like, I'm done, I checked out. Because now it's like, it would have still been just this tiny little blip, right? But we could have just made such a different story out of it. And so for players out there that are on the fence, for people that are thinking about, you know, what that's going to be like, go do it, go figure it out, go see what life has in store for you. You never know. You know, you converted a person that had, you know, a perception about someone from California, which is, that speaks to larger issues in the world. You know what I mean? I won't get into politics, but just a small little glimpse of all these people are in these different camps, and they hear things about, you know, Californians. We always get bashed on from everywhere else in the country, right? But until you meet someone and have a genuine real life experience, that's when you go, oh, it's actually not so bad. Because
you guys
you
aren't all
boiled it down.
entitled.
Exactly. Right? You're a human being that wanted to go experience something, as did that person. And the collective of you two now sharing different perspectives and different points of views, that's the beauty of, you know, a college education, going through sport, being present, like you said. So, man, I'm really glad that you came on and talked about this stuff.
Thank you.
Because I knew, I was like, as soon as I talked to Vanessa, I know she's just got loads of information. You know what I mean? And so,
and it's all racked in here. It's like,
and you gotta unpack it.
I gotta unpack it.
Right? So that's also why I wanted to do this, because there's so much stuff that we've all gone through as athletes, as players, as coaches. And it's just like, I want to be able to have those conversations, right? Like when you get with your old teammates, you're going to talk about those memories, right? And so you just always kind of need to keep that going, right? Because it was such a, like, an integral part of your life, you know? But when you don't talk about it, it's like, you know, you start itching, like, does anybody understand what I've gone
Yeah,
through?
yeah. Well, and like now that Vicky is, you know, in her junior year and she's understanding, okay, maybe, you know, her experience is not, you know, as bad as mine.
Yeah.
Her coach is a great person who genuinely cares about these young women. And I was, you know, there like filtering, and I was like, okay, oh, that's a red flag from that coach, right? You know, X that one out.
Yeah.
So like that's another part of like, I'm glad that I went through those experiences, so she didn't have to go through it. But that's, you know, also like the older sister in me. But you know, understanding like a couple of her teammates are really struggling, and Vicky has been that leader and stepped up and been like, you know, my sister has gone through some things that, you know, a lot of us couldn't handle. So I think we need to understand and appreciate where we're at. Yes, of course, it's not going to be all rainbows and sunshine, and you know, of course, everyone is able to have those feelings, and they're all validated, but things could be worse, you know. So I always like to just talk about my story and understand, because my perception of college was, oh, it's this great time, you know, it's just amazing soccer, you're going to have the best time of your life, you know, it's going to be you're going to come in, you're going to be that powerhouse, you're going to be on the posters, you know. And then I get in there and my whole world is just rocked, you know. So I kind of like to give players that reality check of, hey, okay, you're now an adult and some things are going to happen that you don't like. How are you going to react and deal with those, right? Because when I was 18, 19, right, I could have reacted and dealt with it better had I known, right, okay, it's not going to be as pretty as it sounds. It's going to be very gritty, and you know, you're used to that, but right, be ready for that, not only on the physical piece but the mental, the emotional, the spiritual side as well. But again, right, that all comes with being young, and just you gotta kind of go through it to understand it. But yeah, I love talking about my story, and you know, understanding that what I went through was not the bright side of things, but how can I make good of the situation, and understand that there still were a lot of positives in this negative environment, right? It's about like pulling those memories out and just understanding, right, it made me into a better person had I gone through this, versus if I was that poster child, right, my life would have ended up a lot different than it is now, right? I wouldn't have that same effect right now going into that coaching aspect of being able to really understand and interact with these young people. You know?
Well, I think that's the perfect segue into that next chapter, right? Because I remember seeing something on social media, and I saw this little profile pop up, and it was, you know, coach. And I said, wait a minute, am I reading this correctly?
Yep.
And sure enough, you're coaching now.
Yep.
So welcome to the club, coach.
Oh, thank you.
Coaching is a whole nother monster.
Yep.
And I think getting now the experiences that you've had, and I'm going to backtrack it just a little bit.
Yep.
You mentioned that, you know, it was about who is Vanessa, right? And finding that. And I think, is it safe to say you've now found that? To a certain degree?
I'm still in the process, I think
at the end of the day, you never really, it's always going to be an
growing.
evolution, right?
Yep.
So, but now as you transition into this world of coaching, what is it that you bring to the table? And what are those things that for you want to make sure that you pass on to your players now?
Okay, so the biggest thing, right, I have that flawed resume, right? A lot of the times when these A-star athletes go into coaching, people see, hey, they were, 90-minute player. They, were first team. They were all these amazing accolades behind them.
Yeah.
They gotta be a great coach. And that's not always the case, right? So for me, it's about letting people know I have gone through those struggles. Trust me when I say, right,
Yeah.
I can understand and relate to people who haven't, who started late, who started too early, right? I've kind of been around that whole scene,
Yeah.
and I can really connect with those people on a deeper level than just very superficial of, hey, I was a 90-minute player, which is great, you know, but I think now when I look back on what was I missing, it was somebody who was humbled enough to talk about their struggles, because there was one girl specifically, I can't remember her name, I must have been 10 at the time, and it was for a Saxel camp, and her name was Imani, but we called her E-Monster, and she played on like the California North Stars team, and she didn't really play a whole lot, but she had the biggest impact on me.
Really?
Because she was just an amazing, funny, bright, you know, person. You know, she was like giving me piggyback rides around the field and, you know, just wanting to connect with me.
Yeah.
You know, I looked up to her just because she was, you know, I think at the time she was maybe 16, you know, which to me at age 10 was, she was a full-grown adult.
Yeah.
You know, and this adult wants to connect with a 10-year-old, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, you know, looking back on that, and I was like, she was one of the first people who really wanted to connect with Vanessa, right? And again, right, being on that California North Star team, I was the power player, right? I came in and I was physical. And then going into California Magic, where it was Vanessa's the technical playmaker, right? And then going into college, Vanessa is leadership. Okay, right? What about on the field?
Yeah.
No, we don't really have that role.
Yeah.
Okay. So now as I'm coaching, right, especially with all levels, it's about, okay, how can I be that role model outside of just soccer, outside of just starting player, outside of just leadership? How can I be a role model for this young man or this young woman, right? Because again, soccer is not going to be here forever. You're not always going to play, right? But how can I impact this person to now be better 5-10 years from now, take something away from me? And I think that's, again, like one of the most powerful things that I can bring as a coach is, yes, we can talk about defensive stance and all these different tactical things, but when somebody walks away from a session, right, I always ask them at the end of the session, right, did you have fun? Right? And if the answer is yes, then we accomplished something today. Right? Of course, we got to get down to business, right? But I want to have fun, and I want everyone to remember that, right? This isn't like a do or die situation. It's for fun, right? And
it's a game.
It's a game. It's and you know, again, like I get wrapped up in competition as well. Like I'm a very you take me out to bowling and I'm trying to win, right? But it is a game, you know, and we really lose sight of that, especially in that collegiate world, because it's a full-time job, you know. You have 40-hour weeks, and on top of that, you're a full-time student. You don't have time to have fun, right? This is a job. You're getting paid for a job. Okay, now how can I still bring that fun aspect, right, in our sessions, in our competition, in our drills, so players are, yes, going away learning something, but also remembering that it was fun. Yeah. You know, and I just think that connection, like I've been talking about, I want players to rely on me for as long as they need. That's why, you know, I like to also say, like, do you have any questions for me? I have an open door policy. Like, if you want to ask me about anything, soccer, personal, high school, middle school, whatever, like I will answer it to the best of my ability, but I want to be that person that people can reach out to and know that it's a safe space. You know, because again, like that mental side of, if it's not broken or bleeding, you keep going, right? But it doesn't always have to be just the physical stuff. It could be the mental, the emotional, especially after COVID, right? We saw a lot of those effects go into mental health. So
big time.
Now it's about, right, having somebody outside of maybe just close family or friends, but a coach, especially a young coach, a young female coach, who can be that role model and somebody that I can lean on. So that's kind of been like my biggest like take for how do I want to leave an impression for these kids.
And now that you've done it for a little while, I mean, I know that there's, probably things that you have learned along the way. Is there anything that's challenging within the coaching space for you?
I'm gonna be honest, right? It's my 9 to 11 boys.
Yeah.
I try really, really hard to connect. I just think I haven't had a long enough history coaching 9 to 11 boys. And, like the high school boys are different, at Copa as well, like with all different levels. You're just kind of coming in, we're running the session. Yes, we're having fun as well, right? But I'm not here to waste your guys' time.
Yeah, mindset's a little bit different.
It's very different. The middle school boys, they're trying to be goofy, they're trying to have fun, they're trying to impress, right? Because it's a co-ed mix as well. They're trying to impress the girls, So I'm like, all right, eyes on me. Okay, here we go. Guys, like, stop trying to do karate during our 30-minute, right? Like, let's reel it on in.
Yeah.
But I mean, when you really get like 1 or 2 players who really wants to compete, then they all just like focus in and they're like, I'm gonna beat him, So it's like, okay, we got one boy who really wants to like lock in. But I think that's like my biggest challenge right now is trying to understand and build that relationship with my 9 to 11 boys. But yeah, I mean, they're fun. They're just like that little extra challenge. And some days when I'm like, hey guys, right, I've got not as much energy as I typically does, for the most part they're going to be respectful and they're going to help me out. Other times, right, they might not, and I'm like, hey, right, we got to go and step off, grab some water and come back. Right, we got to reel it back in a little bit. So I try to have that like fun but firm approach to it of, right, when I get things done, I have fun in the process. So let's get things done, right? Then we can walk away knowing that I broke a sweat and we also had fun in it as well. So I think that's probably my most challenging area right now.
It'll come, don't worry. And again, you're just getting into that world, right? And so I can go back to when I first kind of started, and again, you rely a lot more on your playing experience as opposed to kind of the other things that you can bring out of somebody, and that's an evolution. Right. I remember when I went and took the job at Arroyo, actually, and one of the parents, invited us over to his house, and, his impression of me coming into the program was what he had heard from my prior coaching stint, which was at San Lorenzo.
Okay.
And again, that was my first kind of like official role. And again, I've always been loud, I've always been outspoken. I always challenged authority, and it wasn't until I kind of grew a little bit and surrounded myself with other coaches that I started realizing like I need to do better in terms of preparing myself, game preparation, philosophy, things of that nature. And so I'll never forget the conversation. He's like, hey coach, man, he's like, how come you don't yell as much? I heard you just like to yell at people all the time, And when I heard that, I was kind of taken aback. I was like, damn, that's the impression I was giving people. Like, all I do is yell and scream. Like, I'm not a drill sergeant. But yeah, I had that edge. Like, I've always just, that's how I was as a player, as a goalkeeper, just barking orders, So I've never lost that. But it wasn't until I started surrounding myself with other coaches, getting licensed, working with people that really understood and knew a lot more than me, where I was like, oh, okay, like, I'm going to take a little bit from this coach, I'm going to take a little bit from that coach, and kind of mold it into my own thing, right? And as I started to build that next experience was, so much different. And so, yeah, every once in a while I had to, open it up a little bit and let the vocal cords exercise, but it wasn't that same, just, I'll never forget that conversation, but that's just part of the evolution. You don't know what you don't know. You'll learn it. Do you have any other plans to do any other type of coaching?
Yeah, so, well, right now I'm kind of still in between. So, let me back on up. Because Vicky was playing for Oakland Soul this last summer.
Okay.
And one of her teammates, Sydney Shepard, I played with for ODP way back in 2014, 2015.
I think we were traveling at the same time with ODP. I think I ran into you guys.
I think so. Yeah.
Because I was with that group for right around
and
that time.
and that group was, awesome. We were stacked. We had Naomi Gurma in that as well, but that whole team was stacked.
Yeah.
I mean, you couldn't have had like a more perfect roster. So she was playing, and we were just catching up. She's like, "So, are you playing?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm kind of taking like a break." And once I was done playing collegiately, I took a break, which was spring, and then I was like, "Oh, I'm ready to play again." Every summer I was like, "Oh, I'm ready to play. I'm fine.
Yeah.
I'm fine." And so now I finally took like my break.
Yeah.
And she was like, "Ness, listen, right? We're only so young for so long. You gotta play." And so now I'm thinking, all right, maybe I do need to go back overseas and play, because I just took my, I did some volunteering over in Italy with our U.S. Army, and I didn't realize like how important travel was to me until I went and experienced this whole new culture and community. And so I was like, man, that'd be kind of cool to like go somewhere and play and, only play, not have like school as well. So I'm kind of thinking about maybe playing again, but...
well, I think we already established something that it's this tiny sliver, right?
I know, and that's why I'm like, you might as well just do it. Coaching in school is always going to be there, right? But playing, right, it's not. So, but really for the coaching, I kind of just want to build up my resume right now. So I've been doing some individual sessions, some private sessions. I also just did an application on Coach Up, which is more individual sessions as well. I've coached now a little over a year at Copa, which has been great because that's more of like small group, but it's still that individual sessions, right? So I haven't had a team. I did play with Oakland Soccer Club last summer, and I loved both my coaches. They were like, awesome guys. And I had talked to my assistant coach, Ben, and I was like, hey man, like, what you're talking about. And at that point I was already thinking about, furthering my coaching skills. And I was like, can I really use you as a mentor? And he was like, he's this English dude. He's like, yeah, Vanessa, no, not a problem. So we had bumped into each other while I was trying to find a field for an individual. And he was like, hey, so are you going to play this summer? And I was like, yeah, I just filled out the poll. I said, yeah, I'll play. And I was like, oh, well, Mark, who was our head coach, he's not coming back. So are you going to be the head coach? And he's like, yeah. You want to assist? So I
how things
I know. And so again, I think it's just all in the plan, right? So I might go and do another
stuff like that just doesn't happen, Vanessa.
I know.
It doesn't just go, hey, by the way, you stumble into...
No, but it does. It really does, because he coaches for a Piedmont team. I didn't know he coaches for a Piedmont team. And I go to this field looking for some field space because I don't know what fields need permits or not. So I just walked down there and I was like, I was with my mom again. She's supporting me finding a field. And she's like, that's Ben. And I was like, oh, and he's like waving me down. So then we started chatting.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, when would you need me? Because I think I'm going to go and do another volunteership January through March. And I was like, I know it's a summer team, but when do you need an assistant coach? And he was like, oh, late April, mid to late April. And I was like, okay, it's kind of lining up a little too perfect. So I told him, I was like, let me just think on it a little bit, really try to see if this volunteer thing is going to happen or not. But I was like, man, I mean, the opportunity just popped up, right? It's already that big stepping stone where it's a semi-professional team, and the girls are familiar with my leadership role. It's not going to be that hard transition of all new faces. They don't know me, I don't know them, right? And they also know.
Been in the trenches with them.
Yeah, I have, and I think that they also realize, right? Like, yes, I was always that loud, funny, goofy person, but when shit got serious, right, I got serious, and they know that I get serious. So I don't think it's gonna really be a hard transition from going from silly Vanessa, to Coach Vanessa. And I don't want it to be that like weird thing of you need to call me coach. I'm Vanessa. I just need you to understand that there are going to be decisions made, and I need you to understand that it's not going to always be personal, right? If you ever have a question, right, you can always feel free to ask me. But I told him, I was like, let me just sit on it for a little while. And I'm like talking to my mom, and she's like, Ness, that just like fell in your lap? And I'm like, yeah, pretty much. And so ultimately,
what did you say earlier about wanting to build that resume?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So because ultimately everyone's like, you'd be a great club coach. My philosophy with Magic is you start them young and you graduate them. My problem is I don't want to get comfortable in that situation and just have that same repeating cycle. I want to challenge myself. So where I think I would really have that impact is being a collegiate coach. And again, having that flawed resume of I'm not the perfect, D1 player that you think of going into coaching. I have had those struggles. Now players can resonate with me, and I don't want to have that same continuous toxic cycle of coaches being fired for the emotional abuse and just being able to go somewhere else. That's where NCAA needs to step up and be better, right? But that's a whole nother 5-hour conversation for another time. But it's unfortunate. Like, I had to be a part of firing both of my coaches just because I know the standards, and when you are jeopardizing mental health for these young women, right? Like, I know I'm a strong person, and when I am being kicked to the ground, right, that's not okay. So I want to be able to be that voice of like, things are not going to be easy, right? But the hard things we can get through together. And I just want to be able to develop those lifelong relationships with these amazing young women, because they deserve that. They deserve that person, right? Not their coach. They deserve that person in their corner for their life, and even though I didn't have that, somebody else's daughter deserves that. So that's my ultimate goal. I'm going to go back to school to like pursue and see if medicine is something that I want to do. But, ultimately I think soccer has always been what is in stall for me, and I know I can make a true difference in that coaching aspect, so we'll see.
I have zero doubts that if you were to step into that space that you would crush it. It's refreshing to hear that sense of ownership coming from you, especially at a young age, right? I always talk about maturity, and you reach a certain point where, again, now you've experienced things that you would never wish upon anybody. And so therefore you're taking ownership of that and going, if it's under my watch, it'll never happen. And not only that, again, you alluded to, you know, somebody's daughter deserves that, right? At bare minimum, we are going to show these young women what the proper experience is supposed to be.
Yes.
And so we need more coaches that think that way. So good on you for, you know, again, we talked about why you had that experience, you know, good, bad, or indifferent. Like, it was for you to wind up in this role of impacting, right? Again, for me, it was like, how did I get into it? Well, I went through a very jacked up road in terms of my player career and all these different, you know, things that happened, and I'm just like, they're things that I would never impose on anyone, and so I want to be able to, you know, do things the right way, and hopefully have a positive experience for players. So that is to be commended on your front. If you follow that path, take it as far as it can go. It can turn into a lifelong thing.
Yeah.
Right? I was watching the documentary on the U.S. women's soccer team not too long ago on Netflix, and, you know, you saw some of that toxicity stuff that they were talking about play out. Did you watch it? I mean,
yeah,
that in and of itself is just the total mind, you know what? And I'm like, at the highest level, like, seriously? That's unacceptable.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so you see what happens when someone's outcast. You see what happens when, you know, people don't stand up for, you know, the things that should be done the right way. And so we need, again, more people to go, nah, we're not going to stand for that, right? And really just set a new kind of path. And it really starts at that younger age. So I'm glad that you're doing the young kids, because they're always going to remember Coach Vanessa, right? They're always going to remember that experience that they had with you. And even if down the road their coaching, you know, kind of path or experience with coaches isn't the same as what they had with you, just know that you, at least for that little moment that you had them, were able to give them that best version of yourself. And who knows, maybe that's all they get, which would be a shame, but you would hope that over time, right, all the coaching is aligned in terms of it's about the player being developed, not just as an athlete, but as a person. And that's the biggest message that I can really convey. So I'm really excited to hear that. And like I said, when I seen Coach Vanessa, I was like, yes,
yeah,
like, this is great. We need to talk, because I was so happy.
Yeah.
I was genuinely happy. And
I
again,
know.
I've kind of followed you guys as you've grown up, and again, watching you and your sister, you know, from afar, and then close for a couple seasons, you know, when we were at Arroyo together. Like, it's just been fun watching your progression, you know. I cheer for you guys from behind the scenes. It's just good to see good people, right, doing something with the sport that we love, and then turning around and going, I'm going to give back, right?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, really proud of you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Really proud of the Jones family. You guys have done a freaking bang up job over
You gotta
here.
mention Hercules as well. My brother, who's our Frenchie, but that is my brother as well.
Shout out Hercules.
No, again, thank you for not only inviting me, but for doing this, right? You're helping put our voices on a platform, and just talking, having those conversations, especially, right, the difficult ones that for the most part are swept under the rug, but they need to be had, and other people need to listen to them. And so thank you.
Yeah, of course. I know you brought up that you wanted to talk about Warnoff, and I didn't want to leave that out. So you said you had something else that you wanted to bring up.
No, it was just about those lifelong connections, right? Like he was the person who really introduced to me that you can have a relationship with a coach outside of just soccer. And I mean, you know, when I was younger, you know, my first coach was that person as well. Him and his family were second family to mine. And one sour experience, you know, kind of tarnished that, you know, and we're starting to slowly rebuild it. But, you know, again, Warnoff is just, I don't know how else to explain it, but he's just amazing. He's like this great, well-rounded person who doesn't put up with, you know, BS. You know, you got to get work done, but he does it in a very respectable manner, and he understands that, you know, we're humans, you know, we make mistakes, and, you know, we have emotions, and I don't know, he always treated us like a dad, and you know, some of our girls like didn't have that role model, and he filled in, and he was that person. But there are also times where we needed like another teammate, and he filled in for that as well, you know. And
we're not the ball.
Yeah, he is. And there's this one memory. Sorry, Warnoff, I gotta put you on the spot. And we were playing, and you know, he had his gloves on, ready to go. And somebody, I forget who, somebody had taken a shot, and it hit the crossbar, and boom, and I'm in his forehead. And I think after that, he was like, "Yep, practice is done. We're done. Time to go home." But yeah, that dude is he's just a rock star. And again, like he comes out to my soccer games when, you know, it's a very low level team, you know, and he still came out to support, and he's asking me about Vicky, and he's checking in with her, and, you know, just very grateful to have that person who showed me, yes, you can be a firm coach and get things done, but you can also be sensitive and empathetic and understand that this is a person, right? Especially in high school, right? These are very young minds, and you have helped shape them into these amazing women who, when they graduate, they're going to do great things in the world. So yeah, that was my last little bit. Shout out Warnoff, you're awesome.
Love that.
But yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again. Really appreciate you again taking the time, sharing the story. Let me know what happens with the coaching gig.
I will.
I have a feeling we're gonna see you pacing those sidelines.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna be like, hey! You know, because again, I'm the loud one, right? Hey, move down. All right, okay, I see it. And then Ben's gonna be like, Vanessa, just step back. You're fine. You're okay. I got it. All right, Ben. Sorry. I'm getting all
like
caught up.
The NFL coaches that have a guy to yank them back in.
Yeah.
You're gonna have a shadow.
Yeah. Oh man, I'm gonna be like, hey, you, just pull me back, all right? If I'm stepping on the pitch, pull me back, all right? But thank you again for inviting me. This has been awesome, right? Just to talk and kind of catch up, but
cool.
Thanks,
well,
Mike.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, that does it for this episode of the Coaching Rebellion with my coach, Vanessa Jones. You guys can catch her training over at
Copa Soccer Training Center in Walnut Creek. Or you can always DM me if you're looking for some personal training or just some advice. My door is always open.
There you go. Cool. Yeah. All right, that does it for us.